movements this week, haven't we? Woo! I see y'all on all the news stations fighting those fossil fuels, shutting down the banks. How you doing, Travis? It's good to see you. All right. So, first and foremost, for those of you who have not met yet, my name is Carrie Fulton. I'm the organizing director with a new initiative called Center for Oil and Gas Organizing. We work communities that are pushing back against these industries and making sure their voices are heard. And this is my good friend Alice.
Nice to meet everyone tonight. My name is Alice. I'm the senior climate campaigner at New York Communities for Change. We organize working class black and brown folks in New York to fight against Wall Street and put people's interests over climate change profiteers.
Ashe. So, before we get started tonight, thank you so much for all of y'all who came in. There's so much going on this week here in New York City and across the world as people are organizing. But we wanted to take this moment to acknowledge the land that we sit on at this moment. So before I go into that land acknowledgement, I do want to take a quick moment of silence, moment of reflection. We are giving thanks to our collective ancestors, those who have brought us to this moment, to this place where we are sitting down and having the opportunity to hear some critical voices. We are also acknowledging the ancestral land, the people who occupied this land first, the Lenape peoples of New York, which is now called New York. As we think about the land, as we think about the peoples and the history, a legacy that was stolen by the same mind that continues to extract the fossil fuels from our ground, that continue to tear down our communities for market-based mechanisms and schemes we don't want in the first place. As we continue to look at that, we know that that evil is the same evil, and we acknowledge that this land that we sit on is stolen land. And as we walk in our purpose, we know that our purpose is to give that land back. And we acknowledge that. And we're going to have a really powerful panel, and we're going to walk into that. And Alice is going to tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Carrie, for that incredible introduction and that very grounding and necessary acknowledgement. I just wanted to say, first and foremost, as a New York-based organizer, one of the most empowering and invigorating things for us is that we are in the backyards of some of the world's most powerful financial institutions. And because of that, we have the ability, but also the duty, to stand up against them. These are the banks, these are the private equity companies, these are the asset managers, these are the insurance companies that are the reason we are in the crisis and catastrophe that we are in now. And we know that if we can stop the flow of money, we can stop the flow of oil. I'm also a very proud member of the Stop the Money Pipeline Steering Committee. We are an incredible coalition of over 200 organizations of all types across so-called United States. And we are fighting together to stop that flow of money and to create a world in which our children can live healthy lives, breathe healthy air, drink clean water, and not worry about what their lives are going to look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years.
Say that. Yeah.
And without further ado, it is my and Stop the Money Pipeline's great honor to introduce and call on stage our incredible panelists for tonight. Give it up for them! Make some noise! we have three incredible panelists tonight that are going to delve into the work that they are doing to divest from fossil fuels and create a healthy, livable, just future for all. First off, it is my amazing, incredible pleasure to introduce quickly Casey Camp-Horniak. Casey is an elder and the environmental ambassador for the Southern Ponca tribe in so-called Oklahoma. Next up is Roshetta Ozan, a badass, fierce, incredible climate activist, and she is the founder and CEO of the Vessel Project and the Go Fossil Finance Coordinator with Texas Campaign for the Environment. Give it up. And last, we have Carlene Pickard, who works on social, environmental, and animal rights with Lush Cosmetics. Give it up. First off, I want to turn it over to Casey. I would love to hear a little bit more in your own words about yourself. And also, we would love to hear about your thoughts on how divestment intersects with your lived experience and the impacts that the fossil fuel industry has wreaked on your community.
Thank you, Alex. It's not necessary to talk about myself. I'm Banka Abadi. I'm a grandmother, a great-grandmother, a companion of 54 years. I'm an ancestor to many that are coming, and I'm a descendant of those who were forcibly removed from our original territory that Wakanda put us, called Nebraska, or Nebraska, where my grandfather was 6 years old when he walked that trail of tears over 700 miles at the point of a bayonet. My mother was of the first generation to be kidnapped into boarding school, separated from her family, stolen. We come from a stolen land. We live in an occupied territory where the fossil fuel regime is wreaking environmental havoc on us in a way that's indescribable. Right now, I can tell you that 100% of our people, a small tribe, has forms of cancer, forms of autoimmune diseases, forms of cardiovascular problems, all directly related to the serial killers and mass murderers called ConocoPhillips and other kinds of fracking, injection wells, continental carbon black, landfills. And we all have been subjected to this with every single decision made by the federal government of the United States. After 5 treaties were made and broken just with our tribe, we ceded over, I think, 2.4 million acres to the federal government in order to keep a small township in Nebraska. And then they removed us from there, where 1 in 3 of us died. Where 1 in 3 of us died once we got there. I want you all to think right now. Think of your families when you have family gatherings. Go through your mind and remove 1 in 3. Just because of the whim of someone who wanted it. Imagine somebody walking in your front door and saying, yeah, I like this house, I like that bed, I like what you're eating. This is a good place. So I'm going to kill you so I can be here. That's what we live as indigenous peoples in this territory that we call Turtle Island, that is called the United States of America. And that form of killing has only changed from the smallpox blankets that they gave my ancestors, my great-grandparents, and their grandparents to kill us so they could go along Nishude, and translated itself into things like Standing Rock. We were talking about that just in the last days and backstage, where there was a stand made. My son was with Joy Brown on those first days, because we know that the water herself is a sacred being. And we wanted to be helpful not just to the 8 million people downstream, but to all of those that depended on that sacred water. The deer, the finns, the eagles, the farmers, the ranchers that are the breadbasket. For that, too, we suffered. And it's the life of an indigenous person. We don't call ourselves activists or environmentalists. We call ourselves the people, and we're honored to take care of our mother and our living beings.
Thank you, Casey, for those incredible words. I wanted to turn over to Rochetta, too, if you want to share a bit more about yourself and also share about how the current situation in your community could be affected by divestment and how divestment plays a role in the fights that you are fighting.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you so much for painting a beautiful picture for us. You know, a lot of times we're invited to be speakers and speak on panels and represent our communities. But I always like to say that Rochetta is just a single mom from, you know, Southwest Louisiana. I have 6 children and a grandbaby. I can't do any of this alone. And so I just want to take this moment to not only bring in my ancestors into this room, but to also recognize all the people from Louisiana, from the Gulf Coast, from Texas, from Mississippi, who came here to support me, who came here to fight, who came here to stand up for what's going on in our communities, because I'm not doing it alone. There's no way I could do it alone. So I just want you all to recognize the folks from Southwest Louisiana and Texas that are sitting over here and in the middle and all throughout this audience and everyone who's watching. You know, a lot of times we think about extraction, but we don't think about, you know, we're thinking about just the oil and gas that's been extracted. We don't think about the extraction that's happening amongst people. We like to put so much light on one person. None of us can do this alone. It takes all of us. And so the reason why divestment is so important is because we have people who've been fighting for a long time. Ms. Deborah, Ms. Lois, who are sitting over here, have been fighting for more than 30 years. Today, they made themselves a sacrificial lamb, and they refused to move from in front of the doors that they were demanding. And because of that, they were arrested. Ms. Deborah gets around in a wheelchair. When I have a march going on in Southwest Louisiana, Ms. Deborah's at the front. She's on a scooter. She's in a wheelchair. When I have a community meeting, a town hall meeting, Ms. Deborah, Ms. Lois, they are there. They have not given up. But yet they were arrested today because they decided to block the doors to Bank of America, because Bank of America is funding environmental racism and climate chaos. And they came here to say enough is enough. They've never ridden a subway before. They don't know anything about navigating through New York City, but they came here and made themselves vulnerable. And that's the importance of making sure that these fossil fuel industries are no longer in our communities. Our grandmothers and our elders should be at home telling the stories, preparing the youth for living on after they are gone and when they become our ancestors. But instead, they are here in New York City fighting. We're being extractive when we put all of the show and the light on one person, and we're forgetting about the fight and the people who are helping them and the camaraderie and the solidarity, because all of us are connected. The water that flows in the Gulf, it is connected to each of you, whether you live on the Gulf Coast or not. That air, you can't box it up. We're all breathing this stuff in. Everything that we have on our body has some form of petrochemical or plastic in it. When is enough going to be enough? They use those things against us because they want to divide us. They want to separate us. So the fight in Southwest Louisiana, the fight in the Gulf Coast, the fight in Appalachia, the fight in the Permian, it's all of our fights. They're all connected. And until we start working as a unit and moving as a unit, we're going to stay divided and we won't win. But if we think about what happened Sunday, we had over 100,000 people in the street with one message. President Biden declared a climate emergency. Just think if we came together and we had that one ask, and we continue to show up that way. So I want to bring that here first, because what we're fighting in Louisiana, we're fighting LNG, we're fighting petrochemicals. We just got half of $1.2 billion for a new direct air capture hub. But it's so much bigger than that. They're extracting more than oil and gas from us, you all. They're extracting our families. They're extracting our communities. They're extracting our resources, our history. They want to see us divided. We have to stick together and show them that we will win. Ms. Sharon always say that, no, it's not that we will win. We have won. We have already won. And so, yes, we're fighting all of those things in Louisiana, and they're all important. But so is fighting MVP. So is fighting the Willow Project. So is fighting Keystone Pipeline. We all have to show up for each other. If we see that our brothers and sisters over here need support, let's go over there and support them. Let's start showing up for each other. We're showing up in D.C. at the White House, and guess what? President Biden don't give a fuck about us. Show up to each other's communities. Show them that they can't divide us. They can't separate us. Let's bring 100,000 people to the Gulf Coast. Let's bring 100,000 people to Appalachia. I said a long time ago that I was done with this respectability politics. I've said it over and over and over. I'm tired of hearing myself say it. I don't care what suit you wear, what title you wear. You're a human being just like me. You need this same air. You need this same water. So if you sit in a position of power, if you're not using that power, whether you're the president or whether you're the CEO of some big bank, we will come for you. We will no longer vote you in office. We will no longer put our money in your banks. We will barricade your doors. We will continue to come. Because enough is enough. Our indigenous leaders, our elders, when they listen, I've never been in a gang before, but I've studied the gangs. And I know that back in the day, the gangs had a street rule. You don't mess with women, you don't mess with children, and you don't mess with the elderly. When they mess with them today, it ignited a fire in me. I've said the whole week I wasn't going to jail, but today I was ready to go to jail. But I looked at Ms. Deborah and she said, I'm okay. She shouldn't have had to say she was okay because she should have never had to be arrested in the first place.
You heard Roshetta. The movement needs all of us. We need to start showing up, each and every one of you guys in the audience. We need all of you guys. And apparently, we also need soap companies. So, Carlene, can you tell us a bit? You're from Lush. You guys make bath bombs. So, what are you guys doing here tonight?
Thank you, Alice, and thanks for asking the
To
question.
make us smell better.
That's what we thought. We thought everybody needs to smell a little better. But I think, thanks, Alice, and definitely thanks for asking the question in the room, right? The elephant in the room. Why is it that a soap company is sitting on a panel, and particularly for me to have such privilege and honor to sit with such incredible people who are doing organizing work all across Turtle Island and in so many different spaces and so many different places. So it's a real honor, and I thank you all for being part of this conversation that that we and the other organizers really thought was important to ensure happened this week. Coming off of the incredible march, we were on the streets on Sunday, and then going into events in New York, but wanting to unite us in this conversation about truly attacking fossil fuel extraction and how we all as individuals and as companies and as people who work in organizations can play an important role in getting to the root of the money that fuels these pipelines. So we have worked for many years at Lush. We've been doing the math on it, and our first campaign talking about fossil fuel extraction was in 2010, so 13 years ago. In all of our stores across Turtle Island, we were talking to folks about the tar sands. Being a company that is based in the north, particularly I come and a few of us here are visiting from the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, also known as Vancouver. But in all of our stores, we were talking about this mega project at a time when not many of you folks down here had heard of it. Such an eyesore you could see from space. At such a rate of extraction that was coming out of the ground in what at that time was the most ridiculous way of making oil or pulling oil from the ground, from sacred ground in such a special and beautiful place or part of Canada. So our 2010 campaign sort of put us on the map as a company that wanted to talk about devastation being wreaked on the land and on Indigenous people, and that the type of economy in this work under conditions up there that are not the kinds of jobs that people choose to have if there is, a better, cleaner option available. So since 2010, I think we really put out our want to end fossil fuels. We've had subsequent campaigns in our stores that have also supported the folks doing direct action. So if we all remember the 2016 Break Free Day of Action that happened globally, really wanting to lean in and wanting to support folks that are doing the direct actions, the folks that are out there leveling up the activism in the way that we need to talk about how urgent the crisis is. And then we joined the youth-led movement for the climate strike in 2019, and subsequently, I think our process as a business has been to learn from incredible leaders, and that has really helped us as a business grow to the point of actually discussing divesting and looking at where not just our money that are in the dirty banks, but where our money that we are spending, whether it be with contract folks, whether it is in items that we're purchasing, how can we use that wealth that we have as Lush to make sure that it's the cleanest, that we were talking backstage, not to use the word pipeline for things. So the pathway that we're using, that it is the cleanest way possible, and that it's really opening up the vision that we have for how we're going to survive this current moment in history. So we were wanting to talk about the business piece that we think is really urgent, and rallying with other businesses as well to talk about divesting their money, talk openly about how moving money is a complicated thing for a business our size, but how once those ways exist and those new institutions are able to support us, we can move in a big way. We have moved some money so far, and have some pretty good estimates in terms of how much emissions we've managed to curb as a business, that responsibility that we have to reduce our impacts. So we are, really in the space we are right now as Lush because of incredible movements, because of incredible people like yourselves who have been kind enough to share with us strategies for how we can continue to be a better company. So on behalf of everyone at Lush, thank you for that, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this, and know that we're on your side, know that we're trying to rally other companies, know that we're thinking about it, and always welcome feedback and suggestions. So thank you very much, Alice. Great job.
All right, so we do need soap companies after all in our movement. I wanted to get your thoughts too, Rochetta. In terms of the divestment movement, where do you and I and the rest of the movement, where do folks need to go in order to win the fossil-free future that we all deserve?
So when we're talking about divestment, we're thinking about names that you all have heard of before when we're talking about the financial institutions: Citibank, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo. We need to be calling on these large financial institutions to divest from fossil fuels and invest in the communities that they claim to care about. I've said this before, that all of those banks have equity statements that magically appeared after the George. And if you care so much about those communities, why are you investing in industry that's killing those communities? So divest from them and invest in us. So I want you to, when you hear us saying things like Citibank funds environmental racism, or Citibank funds climate chaos, please know that that is what they're doing to our communities, because they're the ones investing in those large industries like Cameron LNG, like Driftwood LNG, Commonwealth, Sempra, Port Arthur LNG, Freeport LNG. But when you hear those names, I want you to think about the people who live in those communities. Freeport LNG had an explosion last summer. Several people were hurt. We've had more than 3 explosions just this year in Southwest Louisiana. By the way, there's more than 25 years past the day it's supposed to be rebuilt that we have to travel over every single day. But that explosion was so big that they shut the bridge down immediately. They shut the bridge down before they even let us know that that chemical release had happened. So we were just out, and about in the community doing whatever, not knowing that our lives were in danger. People live in these communities. If these banks aren't going to divest, we are not going to support them. We're not going to put our money in them. Find local credit unions, find smaller banks, bank black and green. There are several different campaigns and several different ways that you can still save and invest your money and not put it into financial institutions that's going to turn around and use that money to put it in a facility that's going to kill the communities. And so another thing that we can do, and some people think that's just so big, I don't want to move my money, or I don't have money in those banks. Sign the petitions. There are so many petitions out. If you go on Rise St. James page, sign the petitions. There are so many petitions out. If you go on Rise St. James page, they have a petition right now. Port Arthur, Pecan has a petition you can get with John Beard about. We have the Gulf Without LNG.org website. You can go on and learn about what's happening in the Gulf. And all of these resources are going to be available to you. Sign the petitions. But most importantly, what you've done tonight and what you've done all of this week is show up. Show up. Let your voices be heard. Everybody is not a speaker. Everybody is not Rochelle. They don't want to be on the microphone. But just your presence is enough. You being there to support the people who want to be out front. It lets them know that somebody has their back. Use social media. If you don't want to be seen and you don't like the camera, tweet about it. Well, what is it called now? X or something. X about it. Put it on Instagram. Put it on Snapchat. Make a TikTok. Do something to help get the word out. Because you know what the industry is doing? They're painting the picture that where they're located, there is no community. They make it look like there's a field where nobody lives. There's no water. There are no businesses. It's just an empty place. But people live there. I know Joe and Joy Banner with the Descendants Project, they did a project where they added their communities to those maps to show people, yes, we live here. Our families live here. Those are the type of things we have to highlight. Speak loudly and boldly. Use your voice. Use your platform. If you work at companies like Lush who are divesting, help them to spread the word to other companies. And buy products from companies that are on our side. Support them. Help them to grow. Sometimes we think it's just too big. It's so big. But there are some of these things are so small. It doesn't cost anything to share a post. It doesn't cost anything to tweet. If you don't know what to say, a lot of our organizations have social media packs. When I tell you I've never seen so many social media packs in my life, but this year has been like the year of social media packs. Every event that I've been on, they're like, here's a social media toolkit. Get with us. We will give you what to tweet. We will tell you what to put on Instagram. Show up at your city council meetings. In Louisiana, we have parishes, and they're in our parish council. It's called the police jury. Yes, extractive, harmful. It was all based in slavery. They didn't want the black people to go to. So who named something the police jury? Nobody in here wants to go before a police jury, but that's where we have to go. Go to those meetings at your parish council, your county commissioner offices. Write letters to those elected officials. We put them in office. They work for us. Make them do their jobs. Stop continuing to vote people in because you're scared of the alternative. Because I'm scared of what's happening while they're in office. She didn't hold this yellow sign up, but I know my time been up. She was just like, I give up on Rochetta. But finally, what I want to say is what we can do, again, is what I said at the beginning, is show up for each other. Go to each other's communities. Learn about what's happening. You probably won't be surprised, but you might be very surprised to learn that their communities are struggling and fighting just like yours. And they don't want you to know that. But the more you educate yourselves and equip yourselves and show how we're all connected. We're not using the word pipeline, right? Like, we're not saying that this is a pipeline. But we're all connected. And we have to continue to tell that story. What happens to you affects me. What happens to you affects me. Because if you're in this room, guess what? You're probably low income, black, indigenous, people of color, or all of them. Some of us are all of them, right? And that's why we're here. So we're all connected. Use that power, use that connectivity to let it ignite that fire that's in you, because all of us have it. If we didn't, we wouldn't be here tonight. If we did it, we wouldn't have had so many people standing in the rain yesterday. So you have it. Let's just use it and work together. That's it. That's the answer. It's in solidarity and showing up.
Thank you, Roshetta. So next time it's downpouring, you are all going to the Fed, right? And getting arrested? Is that what I hear? And Casey, I wanted to ask, how does all of this, how does this divestment fight, how does that intersect with the rights of nature?
You know, I'm listening and learning. Thank you very much. Yeah, and smelling better, too. There's so many things that come to mind. It's kind of hard to align them. Talking about divestment, as she said, many of us don't have anything to divest. But we are all consumers in this society right now. We can make the choices of where we shop. We can make the choices on whether we grow our own food or have a community food bank. We can make the choices also to connect the insurance companies with the banks. Because I do remember that, what is that word we're not saying anymore? Pipeline. Oh. There was a pipeline that was stopped in the Central Plains because the insurance companies backed out. Yeah. Yeah, so there's 1,000 ways that we can do this. Listening to the young lady here and the young lady here and being here with these elders, you know, it just brings back the time when I was part of the American Indian movement. And we were following on the heels. We Ponca were with Martin Luther King when he made that famous speech in Washington, D.C. that long ago. At least half a dozen of my relatives were there. From that springboard of civil rights, we moved into the American Indian movement. We moved into marching with Cesar Chavez through the San Joaquin Valley. You know, and we kind of chronicle in my family all of those things I told you about my ancestors, but this idea of the need of us to be together. I remember my oldest daughter, who now is with Movement Rights, that I work with, Julia, and her first chant was Que viva la huelga, que viva viva. We're going through the San Joaquin Valley with migrant farm workers because that's who we were at that moment in my life. And that was right after Wounded Knee in 1973. And then Mikasi was born in 1973, my eldest son. His first one was, we come from Wounded Knee, FBI shoot at me, Suzette was, Ronald Reagan, he's no good, send him back to Hollywood. And then Jeff, my youngest, was, let's see, what was he at that time? Oh, Floyd Westerman. Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys know him, but he was sitting backstage with my kids and teaching them, this land is my land, this land's not your land. So this kind of organizing takes all of us. It takes all of us, as she said, to be able to look at things with a perspective that is working. One of the largest growing movements right now in what is called the environment is this idea that we're being gassed, we're being, yeah. I had the honor of being shackled and shoved in a dog cage with a bunch of other powerful women. I think there was 142 arrested that day. And it was brutal and powerful. And my sons were with me, you know, and other relatives. Because that's the way that we're supposed to be as civil society, and we called ourselves, others called us water protectors and land defenders, until the real reality sinks in that we're not protecting nature, that we humans, we are nature protecting ourselves at a time like this. And that's something that we really have to internalize and act on. So, Shannon Biggs, Osprey Oriole Lake, and I met probably 15 years ago or thereabouts, when 100 women globally gathered together talking about these issues, knowing that there was no separation of us. Wherever we were, women are the most impacted. Our babies, our water, our sacred water in our womb and that we drink is so precious that we're praying with the water all the time. I'm connecting with the water with you and the water of Port Arthur and the water of the Arctic and the great Mother Ocean and the water of my ancestors. And I'm saving the water of those that are coming. And to recognize that we're nature, us humans, is again to erase that myth of separation. How do we separate ourselves when we are forced into those colonial schools? And science tells us that we all learn the same thing. You are what you eat. Duh. I am made of buffalo. I'm made of corn. I'm made of fish. I just had something back there that they call tofu. I'm part tofu. And I'm determined that tofu is going to have its own life. Yeah, soybeans. One of my sacred relatives, I just forgot its name. So we've developed something that fits that understanding that my ancestors left me within our own sovereignty. And I was taught this by others who have been working on this issue a lot longer than I have, that to be able to use a structure of Western law, but to use the words, the philosophy, the understanding of the indigenous cosmology of how all life is one, how Star Nation is indeed that stardust that is you and I, that the sacred water indeed has her own spirit, her own way of being, and that she deserves all the protection. So it's not about human rights. I've heard that over and over and over and over and over, and that's what gave us the fossil fuel people. That's what gives us corporations having the rights that the rights of nature don't. But now there are 30 countries in the world that recognize the rights of nature in one form or another. And among the Ponca Nation, as a sovereign people, we enacted something that's called the immutable rights of nature. From the Ponca perspective, we wrote it into a statute. And it is within our territory that nature has her own rights, that climate has a right to exist, because we're in purification right now, where the water is doing what she has to. Flooding, drought, the fire is burning where it has to. The winds are blowing into big hurricanes where they have to, because the earth needs to purify in order to endure for all life, not just human rights, not just human life. And so we have to be able to put these into place so that we can hold those corporations liable for their actions, where we can prosecute them for their misdeeds, for their murderous ways. We would not tolerate that knowingly within the neighborhoods where we lived. When, punk is ruled, it's just kind of like off with your head. You're going to be that bad to so many things, and you're going to kill life where you are. You don't get to exist with us. You're banished. You're no longer part. We have to look at the fossil fuel people the same way. They have to be held responsible, whether it's divestment, whether it's keeping that, whether it is enacting the rights of nature policies within your neighborhood, starting from the ground up. It does take roots. And we're all those roots. Whether you are looking at your kitchen table organizing, where you're sitting with your mom and your dad, your brothers and sisters, your children and great-grandchildren, and you're talking about what needs to be. You're inviting in your neighbors, you're inviting in your neighborhood, you're inviting in, and now, as this young lady points out, I don't know how to tweet, but my great-grandkids do. So I can tell them, hey guys, punch those buttons, man, get this message out. And take it into your schools. It's not about the separation any longer. It's about the protection of all life on earth, and that is the rights of nature. We've also enacted last year in the Ponca Nation the rights of the two rivers in our territory to exist in their natural ways, because they will. Natural law exists on its own. Let's join that. And smell good, too.
The revolution won't be without bath bombs. It has been an absolute honor sharing the stage with each one of you all. I just wanted to thank you so much for spending your evening with us. Will the audience care to give them another round of applause? Give it up! Thank you again for your inspiring words. I hope they don't just remain inspiring words, but that they inspire actions, the actions that each one has talked about. So that is what I really hope everybody can walk away from this section of our event tonight. Before I introduce a set of very special surprise guests, I wanted to shout out each and every person, whether they're in the audience here tonight, or whether they're off enjoying New York or back home already, wherever they come from, each and every one who has shown up to the streets this past week. Besides the tens of thousands of people that showed up, rocked up on Sunday to demand that President Biden phase out the era of fossil fuels, we have also choreographed and put on and shut down 3 banks. 3 banks and asset managers this week. We have also taken over the Museum of Modern Art, which, besides being a cool place to go if you're on vacation, I do recommend it, has unfortunately really troubling ties with fossil fuel CEOs wrecking our communities. And lastly, we also shut down the Federal Reserve yesterday because, give it up. We shut down the Federal Reserve yesterday, put on our wet dog looks endure our wet dog looks in the pouring rain, in one of the biggest climate civil disobedience protests in this decade, because the Federal Reserve could regulate Wall Street, and the Federal Reserve must regulate Wall Street and stop it from funding our destruction. And the reason why we take to the streets, the reason why we take action, is because activism works. And without further ado, actually, I do not, are they there yet? Are you guys in the audience? Without further ado, I want to introduce and invite to come on stage some badass organizers from Sunrise Movement NYU who have just this past week won an incredible victory. They have gotten their administration to commit to divest their $5 billion plus endowment from fossil fuels. Give it up!
Hello, everyone. My name is Sammy Bringus. I am a sophomore at NYU.
Hi, I'm Paige Anderson.
Hi, I'm Dylan Wabi.
And what I want our win to really represent is the power of student organizing. Just a few years ago, I was in a small suburb of California, and I could not even tell you the definition of a fossil fuel investment or divestment. And I'm saying this because young people are really scrappy and energized and can learn a lot in a few months.
That's right!
And I just want our win to represent that when it is time to interrupt and disrupt, know it in your intuition that you have the right to do so. And oftentimes, corporations want us to feel that we are lonely and this is an isolating crisis. But I can tell you right now, the one thing that corporations cannot take away from any of us is our ability to make one-on-one connections. And making connections and organizing with all of these students on campus is the only reason why we were able to achieve divestment at one of the largest private universities in the U.S. So once again, if there's ever a time where you get to speak as a student to a board of trustees, know it in your gut that you might know more about climate change than the millionaire sitting across from you. And I would just like to say thank you so much from the panelists. I learned so much, and I'm so happy we all get to share our stories today and celebrate the many wins that we have experienced over this past weekend. So thank you so much.
So much for sharing your guys' story. Give it up again! Sunrise Movement NYU! I have on stage the next speaker. I just want to don't go anywhere. The panel is over, but the night has just begun. We have an incredible line of speakers coming up next for you all. And I hope you guys really enjoy the show. You would take their words to heart because they have some incredible things to share with us. Thank you, everyone.
Woo woo! Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wasn't that panel amazing? Give it up for our panelists. Woo
Woo! Look at this fancy podium. Ooh, okay. These are tassels. Okay. Yes, come get a picture of these tassels. We need to go ahead. Let's get a picture of these tassels. But before we do that, I have someone super amazing to come to the stage. And let me just tell you, when I met this young woman, I asked her, I said, is there a borough that you want to represent? And she said, nah, I'll take the whole city. This young lady is a high school student who is fighting against climate change right here in New York City. Her name is Madupa Sali, and she is with Fridays for Future. So let's go ahead and give her a big old round of applause. Woo, come on, y'all can do better than that. We got the tassels out for my sister friend. How you doing?
Hi, everyone. Organization filled with youth from around the world who want to see change. I got involved in this movement because growing up, my family has always traveled around country to country. And the one thing that stayed constant throughout was the presence of climate change. Over 5 years ago, I got to see the thousands of Indonesian forest fires. And here I am now, in New York, watching the same things happen again. The alarm bells went off a long time ago. We've been seeing climate disasters impact our lives disproportionately based on our income, ethnicity, and geography. The March to End Fossil Fuels is our call to Biden for action. Fossil fuel CEOs and corrupt politicians are polluting our air, poisoning our waters, and dumping toxins into our neighborhoods. Are we going to accept this? So this summer, we organized a mass mobilization with one purpose in mind: to tell Biden to end fossil fuels. The process has been intense. My peers and I have spent countless hours messaging on Slack, attending Zoom meetings, and flyering. And a fun fact about flyering, people in Columbia University's campus tend to take very well to it, but the people walking by City Hall Park tend to be apathetic at best. Let me give you an example. There was one time a lady yelled at my friend, who has asthma, for wearing a mask in the heat while flying. I'm not sure if she got the memo of what we were flying for. But my point is that despite all the hard work, the march was a product of our hope and resilience. All of us in the climate movement. Biden has let us down again and again by greenlighting fossil fuel projects. But it is not too late to turn back. This week, the UN is calling on global leaders to phase out fossil fuels, and we want Biden to finally live up to the promise of being a climate leader and end fossil fuels. This march was held up by generations of people who care about their planet, by people from around the country and the globe who joined in to strengthen the message. This is what the people want. We want an end to fossil fuels. I want you all to use the momentum of this march to tell your stories, to bring up the injustice and crush it, and to keep adding pressure until we win our future. With that, let's watch the video.
Declare a climate emergency. We're here today to tell our leaders loud and clear, you need to phase out fossil fuels to survive our planet. The cynics want us to believe that organizing doesn't matter, that our political system doesn't matter, that our economy doesn't matter, and we're here to say that we organize out of hope.
And fossil fuel. Our lives depend on it today.
Stop the expansion and phase out.
From President Biden to the UN General Assembly to all of our elected officials, we demand a change. It will happen now. It begins today.
So I ask you, what are we going to do about it? What do we want right now? Climate action? No! Climate action? No! Climate action?
No! And today, there are tens of thousands of us out here with one simple message for Biden. You have the executive authority to end oil and gas
expansion and keep these fossil fuels in the ground.
These fossil fuels. Yes. All right. How many of y'all are ready for the next speaker? I don't think that's enough for y'all. There's some of y'all that are like, I'm indifferent. No. Are you indifferent about climate change too? Absolutely not. So let's go ahead. And our next speaker is from a great organization known as We Act for Environmental Justice. And if you do not know that organization, hunty, Google is right there. Let's go. That is one of the first and finest leading environmental justice organizations in the United States of America. And so without further ado, I want to bring up to the stage Ms. Sonal Jessel of We Act for Environmental Justice, based in Harlem, New York. How you doing?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I appreciate the energy. This is great. Much more fun than our normal panels that we're doing for the rest of Climate Week. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you to the Climate Rising event for having me. So for those of you coming from elsewhere, also welcome to New York City. As we call it, the best city in the world, but that's our own opinion. My name is Sonal Jessel. I'm the Director of Policy at We Act for Environmental Justice. We are a community-based organization based in Harlem, right here in New York City. And we, since 1988, have been working to build healthy communities through the creation of sound and fair environmental health and protection policies and practices. Communities of color, to build healthy communities in our home, not only in New York City, but we also work statewide and nationally as well. We have been fighting against environmental racism for about 35 years, and climate justice has become an increasingly pressing focus of ours because it is environmental justice communities that are being hurt by the climate crisis today. And to be local in New York, that is something we're seeing across the city, across the boroughs, with flooding, with extreme heat, with these like cloudburst rains that we're now getting, that people are calling it cloudbursts. There's a lot going on in New York City, and we're woefully underprepared for what's coming to us. The summer, shaping up to be the hottest summer on record. June and July already setting worldwide records. Phoenix and its suburbs are a record-setting 31 consecutive days of temperatures over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. There's somewhere around 100 excess deaths attributable to extreme heat every year. So if you go online, it says a much smaller number, but all the researchers that have looked back have found that extreme heat is actually killing us a lot more than we even realize. Studies have shown that climate change is increasing in the length, duration, and intensity of extreme heat events. And extreme heat is a and all sorts of other weather-related killers. Extreme heat, unfortunately, does not impact everyone the same, and that's why We Act is here and what we do in New York City. Low-income communities and communities of color hit the hardest. For example, in New York City, 50% of heat-related deaths are amongst Black and African-American people in New York City. However, they only make up somewhere around a quarter of New York City's population. So obviously there's something happening here that's disproportionate. Some of the reasons for this disparity is because we know communities of color and low income are facing barriers to healthy communities due to legacy of racist policymaking like redlining, barriers to healthy homes due to lack of investments in housing and lack of energy security. New York is considered a leader in climate across the US, and yes, we have gotten some major things done here, which is really exciting, yet we're still not seeing the level of action that we need to prevent the worst case scenario. So we need the state to commit to no new fossil fuels, massively expand renewable energy and community. We need investments in housing. We need massive upgrades in our public transit system so we can reduce private cars, make streets more green. We need so much more, and it can be done while we center environmental justice communities in the center. So We Act, we spend a lot of time on solutions. We focus on building capacity amongst environmental justice organizations to create solutions in their neighborhoods. We direct funding to communities that need it the most. We fight for laws like the new cumulative impacts legislation we just passed last year. We spend time building agency and knowledge amongst youth and adults through our environmental justice training programs. We contribute to research, constantly showing the world that communities are overburdened by climate and environmental hazards, yet have the solutions to the problems. And now we are launching a new clean energy hub for Manhattan to help people and buildings be part of the energy transition. So together we've achieved a lot in the fight against climate change here in New York, yet there's a lot more to do. This is not only true of New York, but nationwide. So I appreciate everyone being here for Climate Week, doing your work in New York and across the US and in the world. And, it's because we're all here today because it takes people power to fight for this major transition that we hope to achieve. So thank you all.
Thank you, thank you. So much. Give it up for WEAG and for Sona. We are so thankful for New York hosting all of us so graciously over this week of Climate Week. I do want to remind everybody that as we continue to fight against climate change, we are battling the impacts of climate change every single day. And with that in mind, I do want to take a moment to pay respects and also take a moment to recognize those who are still dealing with the very recent impacts of wildfires, hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, heat waves, all across our world and this country. And with that, I want to bring up a good friend of mine. His name is Kanyela Ng, and he has been one of the strongest voices when you think about what's been happening, especially in Hawaii. Kanyela Ng is the co-founder of Our Hawaii, national director of the Green New Deal Network, and a former member of the Hawaii House of Representatives. Everybody, let's give some good love for that. Go ahead. Come on, Kanyela. Thank you.
Aloha. Aloha. All right. Aloha aina kako. In the world we need and deserve that should have already been built. I wouldn't be here in New York City right now. Just 1 month ago, an entire town on my home island of Maui was set ablaze by colonizers and corporate polluters. And I should be with my family and community right now, grieving and healing. A basic social safety net, I'm gonna take this off, would have already been in place. Stable housing for displaced residents, paychecks for displaced workers, ample, dignified food, water, shelter, and clothing, provided free at point of delivery by the government of the richest, most powerful empire in human history. But because of corporate capture, our government is struggling to show up the way we need them to. In fact, under a moral government, the fire would have never spread. The invasive guinea grass introduced by oligarchs centuries ago would have already been replaced by lush, regenerative, native vegetation. Utility lines would have been underground and never fallen in the force of Hurricane Dura, which ignited the flame. Families have already secured energy freedom through rooftop and community solar, subsidized battery storage and electric vehicles, public utility ownership. And young people would have guaranteed well-paying building renewable infrastructure and restoring our island's ecology. And of course, the rising, record-breaking, previously unthinkable global temperatures that caused the drought, dryness, and high winds on my island would have stabilized decades ago. But this vision isn't too late to realize for the majority of communities across the United States. So here I am today, 6,000 miles away from my home to sound off a warning of what's to come and to stop the sort of destruction we are witnessing on Maui from arriving into your neighborhood, and instead create a more abundant, beautiful, open, fair, and joyful world to come. Yeah, let's hear it. Bring some positivity into this, you know? For 15 years now, I fought against corporate pollution and colonial greed. In college, I ran for student president and helped convert our buildings to net zero before net zero was a thing. At 23, I flipped a Republican district in the state legislature and served 3 terms to help pass the nation's first on-bill rooftop solar financing program, community solar legislation, a public green bank, and the nation's first statewide 100% renewable goal. But today, the people who benefited most from these groundbreaking bills tend to be wealthy outsiders, rather than the people from my community. And even after passing these game-changing reforms, we did not have the power to ultimately stop the fires. The immense power of oil, coal, and gas corporations and the systemic forces of racism and capitalism remain. So over the past decade and a half, I've come to learn that the only way forward is to build mass people power in every community across the globe by organizing across all movements for justice. That's why I now lead the Green New Deal Network, advancing intersectional climate justice all across the United States. You see, like the people of Lahaina, I grew up in a working class environmental justice community where it would rain sugarcane ash on us while we were playing at recess. And our experience underscores that the first and most severely impacted by the climate crisis are often indigenous, Kanaka Maoli like me, black, brown, and low-income communities. These groups have contributed the least to climate change, but have suffered the most and must be prioritized in our transition to a better world. Justice 40 and the Inflation Reduction Act serve as welcome change of direction. It's a down payment on what's needed, but we urgently need more. At the national level, it's past time for President Biden to officially recognize the climate crisis by declaring a climate emergency. We're living it. This would enable him to halt the destruction of massive and destructive fossil fuel production that drive these disasters. Furthermore, substantial federal investments on the scale of trillions are required to prevent catastrophes like the one on Maui in the future and prioritize the welfare of working families in mitigation and recovery efforts. Any climate solution would be incompatible and incomplete without justice at its core. Native folks like me and across the continent should be central to the rebuilding and recovery efforts. We should have the authority to manage our own lands and resources. So that's federal investments, but local management. Many of the people that I've come across this week so far, many of the folks I'm looking at the room, I know care so deeply about our planet, and the people that will suffer at the wake of its destruction, and have dedicated your lives to this work. But even I, my 4-year-old son's in the audience, and I tend to talk about the climate as I want him to have clean air, clean water, etc. when he's my age. And that's true, that is what drives me. But I've been missing the mark. The real urgency is at any moment, tomorrow when you wake up, the church you go to, the school you send your kids to, the stores, the grocery stores you shop at, could be reduced to ashes. Tomorrow, right? We only have a few years left to mitigate the worst impacts of climate change. That means really one election, Presidents only have like the first year or so to get things moving. So this is it. This is fucking it. We need to hold every elected official accountable across not just Republicans, not just the climate deniers, but also the climate change enablers on the Democratic side to do more. That's the urgency we're operating under. Anything less would be an affront to the legacies of all the friends and neighbors that I've lost just last month. The good news is we already have the solutions. We just need the power. Our ancestors knew of a society based on sustainable values that measured a nation's wealth by the health of our land, air, and water. It measured success by the quality of our relationships and the time afforded to nurture them. They measured economic strength by whether all of us can thrive, not just by how well the rich are doing, like the GDP today. And we can get there, again. We can do it again. If our ancestors can rise up, so can we. So I implore you all to join and organize for the movement for a Green New Deal. Partner and fund the Green New Deal network if you have the capacity. And our unique contributions to the hundreds of groups across 23 states and growing. We are a cross-movement united front of labor, native, green, and power-building groups coming together for a positive vision for a clean energy future. Not just less plastic bags and straws, but what we will gain from the transition, the jobs, the food, the art, and the beauty. In these heart-rending, thank you. In these heart-rending times, it's challenging to see beyond the immediate pain. But there's a silver lining in our resilience. The wildfires of Maui, while devastating to me, has also ignited a new spark. They've awakened a renewed commitment to not just rebuild, but to redefine what Hawaii and all of our communities stand for. This is our home, our history, our legacy. And it's our collective responsibility to ensure that our future is carved out of respect, understanding, and love for its past. So it's a QR code somewhere. We are raising money right now for direct relief for Maui. It's been really heartening to see all the support across the nation. We know that if it's going to take $6 billion to rebuild, that's not going to come from philanthropy. That's not going to come from, that can either come from private equity or government. And we know if it comes from private equity, that's it, we're dust. So how do we position our people? How do we position the people of Maui to show up more powerful than they've been before the crisis, when these disaster capitalists really strike? So we're conducting needs assessments neighbor to neighbor. We hired directly impacted folks to organize, and they've already organized over 3,000 people, directed them to the right services, and already turned out 200 people just in the last 2 weeks to various council meetings. So they'll be rebuilding a home one day and testifying the next day. It's really a beauty to see, and we're working to set a model of how to respond to these crises down the line. So any support, much appreciated. But it's always an honor to be a movement with you all, and hope to jam with you a little bit more after this. Aloha mai kako ma'alono.
Thank you. And we got the babies in the building. We do this for the babies. And now we have a short message from Senator Ro Khanna. All right.
Hello, everyone. I am so proud of the climate activists who are out in New York this week marching for a simple principle. It is time to declare a climate emergency. After the extreme weather events this summer, the heat, the dry weather, the wildfires, the flooding, the tragic events in Maui, it is obvious we need a climate emergency. I'm proud of Jamie Henn. I'm proud of Gen Z for Change. I'm proud of the thousands of young people in New York and around the country who are trying to wake Washington out of our slumber. Declare a climate emergency. Stop with these projects like Willow oil drilling. Let's tackle the climate crisis with the urgency and the boldness it deserves. We hear you, and the world will hear you.
Woo-hoo. All right, thank you, Congressman Ro Khanna. We appreciate that. From California. We put a little manifestation, see if he can make it to the Senate. Let's put that up there, some good energy for him. Our next speaker came all the way here from Port Arthur, Texas. And his name is Mr. John Beard. He is the founder. Yes, let's get some energy. I see y'all. I see a few people in the room already know who I'm talking about. They know that he's about to say something real powerful. So we got Mr. John Beard. Come on up here, sir.
Good evening, New York, New York. How y'all this evening? Hope you're feeling good. See a lot of my friends down there and all over. James, I got a special thing for you, but too bad we couldn't get that together on time and all that, but that's okay. We've been asked to give some comments or to speak on imagining the end of fossil fuels. But before we get into this, I want you to just take a minute, because it's been a long day. We've all had a lot to do. We've marched, we've been in the rain, we've gotten wet and all cold and all of that. Cold's good for us coming from Texas, hot as it's been. So we enjoy it. But I want you to just take a deep breath and close your eyes for a minute. And I want you to listen to something I have to say. And I'm going to do my best to do this in the best way that I can. I don't know how it's going to work, but we'll see. But let's just take a deep breath and exhale. And imagine, think about the end of fossil fuels. We dream of a better world, a world free of extraction, poison, poverty, pain, and death. They said to one another, "Behold, here comes the dreamer. Let us slay him, and we shall see what become of his dreams." You can kill the dreamer, but you can never kill the dream. We, mankind, the human race, and all we've done, all we achieve are such stuff that dreams are made of. So I'm going to give you a little bit of something to think about. I'm a child of the 60s, and what came to my mind in imagining these things was a song by John Lennon. And I'm not that great a singer, but I'll give it a try. But I want you to listen to the words, and it's from his song called Imagine. Imagine there's no fossil fuels. It's easy if we try. Only oil and gas below us. No flare, smoke, or pollution, only blue sky. Imagine all the people living fossil free. Imagine there's no cartels. It isn't really hard to do. Nothing to invest in, kill, or die for, and no hydrocarbons too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. Ooh. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. Now imagine no possessions, I wonder if you can. No illness, greed, or hunger, or brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say that I'm a dreamer, oh, but I'm not the only one. And I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Oh, you may say that I'm just a foolish dreamer, but I know I'm not the only one. And I hope and pray someday you'll join us. And this beautiful world will live as one. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. All right, let's give a good round of applause. Thank you for bringing that energy in. We needed that. Woo, we needed that. All right now. Woo, I know y'all ready. Now my next friend that's coming up is Miss Crystal Cavalier. Come on now. Come on now. Crystal came here all the way from North Carolina, and she's going to tell you all about her organization. She's the co-founder of 7 Directions of Service and a citizen of the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation in Burlington, North Carolina. Y'all go ahead and give her some good energy. You got this.
Listen, John made it really difficult to come out here. Mikudaminchin Kiyohe Nahon Pipise, Mima Crystal, Mima Occaneechi Saponi Watiwa. So first I just want to say we have to last one day longer than the industries we're fighting. I'm sure there's plenty of greenwashing and false climate solutions being shared over and over at the UN, but we have to speak truth to our power. I want you to keep this momentum going from Sunday. We need to find a sense of purpose behind what we're trying to do. So keep that momentum up, the energy up. Do something every day to keep that momentum going. I have personally called out President Biden and Senator Joe Manchin, and I'm not afraid to do it again until they hold these promises. They make these pie crust promises easily made and easily broken. And we are moving forward with divestment. That's the next strategy from banks and asset management corporations. These organizations put commercials in our community saying they are good neighbors. They're here for the people. That's not true. They are death camps and they're killing our people. I am personally organizing my community and educating them about why they need to divest from banks like Bank of America, Citibank. Think of it as an investment in your community and a divestment from fossil fuels. My friends Lauren, John, and coming together with a common goal. And we must resist the constant divisions that the governments and corporations are throwing at us. And finally, for my indigenous relatives who are remembering who they are and why you are fighting, you are doing this for the next 7 generations. Alewa.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Woo, okay now. And now we're going to get a little international with it. And we have my lovely friend Antonella Kaye. She is the founding member of the collective Yas Unidos, and has been a protector of nature, animals, and human rights for over 12 years, denouncing the destructive mining and extractive of fossil fuels in the Ecuadorian Amazon. She will be joined by her translator, Nemo Guiquita, is a Waorani indigenous leader from the Obapare community in Ecuador's remote Amazon. She began organizing at a very young age and is inspired by the work, stories, and lessons from her grandmother, Dayumi, a historic leader who helped obtain the first legalization of the Waorani territory. Now, I apologize if I have thrown off any of those names, but they're going to come up here and they're going to tell you all about it. So let's give them a real good round of applause. Y'all ready?
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Nemo, yo soy de un territorio guaraní, estoy muy contenta de tener a ustedes aquí y de conocerles. Vengo de un territorio sumamente preocupante porque en nuestro territorio hay muchos derrames de petróleo y hace poco hemos estado en una consulta popular del Yasuní. Más de 10 años ha sido una lucha que hemos ganado hoy día, pero
So thank you. I'm very pleased to be here. I am Nemo from the Guarani peoples. I'm happy to be here. As you know, we're very worried because in our territory there is a lot of spills and oil spills, and we come from a victory from the Yasuní, like this has happened after 10 years of fight.
Okay, hace 60 años mi pueblo fue contactado por los evangélicos. Entonces, desde ahí hemos estado siempre presentes las empresas petroleras en nuestro territorio y yo he crecido en ese mundo entre las empresas petroleras, la contaminación, y he visto la lucha de mi abuela, de mi madre. Hoy sigo yo, entonces vamos a seguir también nuestras futuras generaciones pensando en la madre naturaleza, pensando en nuestro hogar, que es la selva, pensando en los ríos, pensando en el equilibrio de la naturaleza. Para nosotros, todo lo que tenemos y todo lo que sabemos y todo lo que conocemos y todo lo que es para nosotros una vida es la selva. No conocemos otro mundo más que nuestra selva, que es parte de nuestra vida.
Okay, that's all. So for that more than 60 years, our people have been recently contacted, and there were the presence of the evangelics, but also there were presence of oil companies in our communities. So I grew up with a lot of contamination, a lot of pollution. So from generations, from my mom and for me, I fight for this, for the future generations. I'm always thinking about Mother Nature, about the equilibrium with the nature, and it's everything that we know, the rainforest, it's everything that we know and we live on there.
Yasuní es parte de mi territorio guaraní, donde habitan mis hermanos guaraní y también mis hermanos no contactados. Actualmente hay muchas empresas petroleras, plataformas petroleras, y con ello ha llevado muchas contaminaciones, ha ingresado la caza ilegal con las carreteras que han abierto, y también la caza ilegal de los animales, la extracción de las empresas madereras, todo tipo de daño que pudieran hacer en nuestro territorio ha llegado conjuntamente con las empresas extractivas. Es muy triste ver que nosotros como pueblos indígenas, que somos dueños, mientras nosotros resistimos, luchamos, el gobierno ecuatoriano lo único que ha hecho es sacar los recursos de nuestros territorios.
So the Yasuní is part of the Guarani. So the Guarani live in where the Yasuní is. So we live together with the non-contacted people, and there is a lot of oil platforms there, and there is a lot of pollution, but there is also illegal hunting, illegal logging, that all of that arrive with the
Lo único que nosotros pedimos como pueblos originarios es nuestro territorio, que que nos dejen vivir como eran nuestros tiempos cuando vivían mis abuelos, y hoy vemos tanta contaminación y nos duele ver cómo están destruyendo nuestro territorio, nos duele ver cómo está actualmente nuestro territorio lleno de contaminación, lleno de destrucción. Para nosotros, nuestro territorio les ha servido como sacrificio para que otras ciudades puedan desarrollar, porque para nosotros lo único que han dejado las empresas extractivas es enfermedades, muertes, pobreza, es lo único que conocemos porque no hay desarrollo en nuestros territorios.
Sorry, I need to and poverty and debts. Okay. So what we want, indigenous peoples, is the respect of our territories. We want to live as we lived before. Our territory is pollution, destruction. Our territory is being sacrificed for what the other people consider what is development, and the only thing that they have bring to our territory is illness, poverty, and death.
Gracias por su tiempo, me queda un minuto. Quiero presentar también a un colectivo que nos ha ayudado a la lucha, que han estado presentes durante 10 años. Es nuestra compañera Antonella Calle, que ha venido también desde Ecuador, apoyando en este proceso de lucha para nosotros, que ha sido poderoso. Estamos muy contentos, pero hoy empezamos la verdadera lucha, que es del camino de resistencia contra las empresas petroleras.
I have just 1 minute, but I want to introduce somebody from the coalition who has been helping us into the fight. It's our colleague Antonella from Ecuador. She has been supporting this fight, but now we also are starting this new fight.
Gracias, y nosotros seguimos en la resistencia. Gracias.
Thank you.
Muy buenas noches con todas y con todos. Yo vengo a contarles que el 20 de agosto pasó algo histórico en el Ecuador y en el mundo.
Good night. Today, for the ones that understood, today I want to talk about something that happened the 20 August in Ecuador. It was something historic for the world.
Fue la primera vez que un pueblo de un país tuvo en sus manos la decisión de dejar el petróleo en el subsuelo. La primera vez que pasa esto en el mundo entero.
It is the first time that the people in the country had the decision to leave oil on the ground. It was the first time that it happens in the world.
Cerca del 59% de las y los ecuatorianos decidieron dejar el petróleo en el subsuelo de uno de los lugares más megadiversos del planeta y hogar de los últimos pueblos aislados y pueblos indígenas, como de donde es Nemo, dejar el petróleo en el subsuelo y parar la explotación en este bloque.
So it's where more or less 59% of Ecuadorians decide to leave oil on the ground in the place of the most biodiversity, where is the home of indigenous peoples, like where Nemo lives, and also non-contacted, and they decided to stop this extractive industry and leave the oil on the ground.
Esta es una lucha que tiene más de 10 años, en donde hemos estado diferentes sectores de la sociedad civil ecuatoriana.
This is a fight that has more than 10 years in different places where all Ecuadorian civil society has been there.
Esto fue un mensaje muy importante para el mundo porque las actividades, las empresas petroleras, mineras y petroleras siempre se han caracterizado por ser antidemocráticas y decidir sobre la vida de todas nosotros.
This is a very important message for the world because all the extractive industries, the oil and the mining, they have this characteristic of being very anti-democratic.
Y esta vez el pueblo ecuatoriano les dijo, basta, ahora el pueblo va a decidir sobre qué vida y qué futuro queremos para el Ecuador y el planeta entero.
And this is the first time that the Ecuadorian people said stop, and this is where the Ecuadorian people are going to decide about the life and the way that the Ecuadorian people wants to live.
Esta lucha de 10 años que ha sido súper difícil nos demuestra, como ya decía el Che, que no hay que abandonar la lucha, porque la única lucha que se pierde es la que se abandona.
This is the 10 years of fight where it's shown, but as Che was saying, that we should not stop the fight because
la única lucha que se pierde es la que se abandona.
The only fight that we lost is the one that you live.
Y también nos demuestra que frente a la inacción de los gobiernos del mundo, solo los pueblos somos los que vamos a salvar este planeta y los que vamos a escribir una historia diferente para este mundo.
And this is the fight that can show us in the face of the inaction of the governments in the world, that is the people that is going to, the only ones that are going to save the planet in front of this climate crisis.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Let's give them a big round of applause, y'all. Yes. All right, we have a quick video from Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island, Sheldon Whitehouse.
For more than half a century, the biggest oil and gas companies knew of the damage their product was causing. They knew that fossil fuels were causing the climate to change, and they knew the effects would be catastrophic. But instead of warning the public and preparing the transition to clean energy sources, they spent billions spreading lies and manipulating our politics. They ignored their own scientists and built a network to propagate fake science. Fossil fuel billionaires funded dark money organizations and phony research groups to spread that propaganda. This coordinated campaign of deceit and disinformation was a fraud against the American public, and it ravaged the environment. Every year, the evidence against them grows more damning. That's why dozens of cities and states across the country are suing big oil, with fossil fuel companies fighting back tooth and nail in the courts, including a sadly successful scheme to capture the Supreme Court. All around us, we see the damage that uncontrolled fossil fuel emissions have already wrought. This summer, the hottest on record, we saw unprecedented heat waves, floods, and wildfires. $23 billion disasters so far this year. 250,000 deaths worldwide every year is the cost of fossil fuel emissions, and it will get worse. Warnings abound of looming systemic economic risks, risks that will cascade beyond directly affected sectors and spill widespread damage throughout the entire financial system. As Senate Budget Chairman, I've held repeated hearings on these systemic risks, from a crash in coastal property values, to a crisis in wildfire insurance, to a general retraction of insurance markets, to a full collapse of the carbon bubble. And nothing says all those risks can't happen. But instead of ending their campaign of disinformation, big oil companies continue to spew pollution and propaganda, while raking in hundreds of billions in profits and gouging customers at the gas pump with prices inflated by cartel pricing, their final desperate feast before the music stops. This is why I pushed for a windfall profits tax on these big polluters and a carbon price, a pollution penalty on emissions. It's why I've urged the Department of Justice to at least investigate Big Oil's decades-long pattern of denial, delay, and deceit. As chairman of the Budget Committee, I'm determined to hold the industry to account for the lies they told, the harm and corruption they've inflicted, and the danger they present. The Budget Committee has already held 12 climate hearings in this Congress, and that's only the beginning. Stay tuned for big things to come. It's actually really wonderful that so many people have shown up to make their voices heard at Climate Week. If we can defeat the fossil fuel industry denial machine, we have the tools to find a pathway to safety. We will need corporate trade associations to clean up their act. Broad complicity by trade associations puts corporate America's climate posture in Congress solidly against progress. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, for example, is repeatedly identified as a worst climate obstructor. But pretty much everyone is bad. When we defeat their denial machine, when we win, it will bring us more than just a pathway to climate safety. It will bring a more honest government. It will bring a stronger American economy. It will bring cleaner air and water for our kids. It will bring longer lives for our seniors. It will bring less war, destruction, injustice, and misery around the world. That's worth fighting for.
Wonderful, wonderful, everybody. Thank you. And next up, how's everybody doing? We're making it through. We have Mr. John Mackin, and he's the press director for Our Children's Trust. Everybody give him a round of applause, y'all.
Thank you, Carrie. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me this evening to talk a little bit about our role in this fight to end fossil fuels. As Carrie said, my name is John Mack, and I'm the press director with Our Children's Trust. We are the world's only nonprofit, public interest law firm to exclusively represent and support young people who are turning to the courts to hold their governments accountable and protect their legal rights to a safe and livable climate. Thousands of young people just joined a march to end fossil fuels. At this very moment, we represent and support hundreds of young people across the United States and around the world who are fighting for climate justice in our courts. Currently, we have several youth-led climate cases making their way through the court system in Utah, Virginia, Hawaii, as well as our federal case, Juliana v. United States, and internationally. We have even more youth-led climate litigation in the works. We are actively preparing for trial in our Hawaii case, Navahine F. v. Hawaii Department of Transportation, which will begin in June 2024. This will be only the second ever trial of its kind in the United States, coming just 1 year after our history-making constitutional climate case, Held v. State of Montana. In a moment, I'm going to share a video from Eva, one of the 16 youth who brought the Montana case against their state government. But first, I'd like to share briefly about why her case is so historic. First, when Eva and her fellow youth plaintiffs walked into the courtroom in Helena, Montana this past June, they brought the first ever constitutional climate case and first ever children's constitutional climate case to trial in United States history. Then they made history again when, on August 14th, they won their lawsuit. In Held v. State of Montana, Eva and 15 fellow young Montanans argued that by promoting and supporting fossil fuel extraction and burning, which makes the climate crisis worse, their state government was violating their constitutional rights to dignity, health and safety, equal protection of the law, and a clean and healthful environment. When Judge Kathy Seeley issued her ruling, finding wholly in favor of the youth, She not only declared that the state of Montana violated the youth's constitutional rights, but also established critical evidentiary and legal precedent for the fundamental right of youth to a safe climate, not just immediately for the young people in Montana to a safe climate, but also young people in jurisdictions around the world. She found that every ton of greenhouse gas matters, that every ton of greenhouse gas makes the climate crisis worse, disproportionately harming young people, and this will get worse without science-based action to address climate change. Now let's hear from Eva. She wasn't able to join us in New York today, so she recorded a short video to share with you a little bit of background about why she got involved in the case, what she loves about her home in Montana, and what this case means to her.
Hi, my name is Eva. I'm 17 and I'm from Livingston, Montana. I absolutely love this place. I love the mountains and the rivers and the sky and all of the wilderness it has to offer. The wildlife here is incredible. There's grizzly bears and mountain lions, ospreys, hawks, and eagles. There's deer, and it's just absolutely wonderful. I love spending time outside with my friends, my family, my dogs, and just getting to exist in a place like this. I am truly fortunate to have grown up here. However, I am really scared for Montana. Climate change is only continuing to worsen. In recent years, I've witnessed wildfires and flooding and sporadic storm events. Almost every single summer, there's a smoke season where the sky is smoky and there's a haze over our homes. Last year, I experienced an extreme flooding event not 5 minutes from our home on the Yellowstone River. It was devastating. Multiple homes were flooded and people had to be evacuated. It was a very, very scary time. Climate change is something that weighs on my mind a lot. It is something I think about every day. It's something that worries me. I'm happen. This is why I became a plaintiff in Hell versus Montana. I have a deep love for the natural environment, and I care about securing our futures, the future of our generation as well as future generations to come. It's really, really exciting that we have won this case because our Constitution has been upheld. In the Montana Constitution, it states that we have an inalienable right to a clean and healthful environment. And by winning this case, it's not only going to change how fossil fuel permits are issued in the state of Montana, but it will set a precedent for everywhere else in the world. I'm so excited for what comes next.
Big thank you to Eva. So, what does this all mean? What comes next? First, as of August 14th, Judge Seeley's ruling is now the law of the land in Montana. That means that the state government must consider climate change and greenhouse gas emissions when deciding whether to permit any more fossil fuel activities, if necessary, to protect the youth's constitutional climate rights. Because the overwhelming evidence established at trial, from youth testimony to expert witnesses, showed that fossil fuels are making climate change worse, violating the youth's constitutional rights, and that renewable energy sources can meet all of Montana's energy needs. This ruling should prompt Montana to transition away from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. We expect the state of Montana to appeal this decision to the Montana Supreme Court, but we are confident that the Montana Supreme Court will uphold Judge Seeley's ruling, giving the overwhelming weight of evidence on the side of the youth. We also anticipate that courts around the country and around the world will read Judge Seeley's opinion closely, and that many other states and countries will consider how governments should be held accountable for their contributions to the ongoing climate crisis. Lastly, our Children's Trust will continue to represent and support young people like Eva, who are turning to the courts to protect their right to a safe climate. You can learn more about our work by following us on social media, @YouthVGov. Join us, and together we'll take action in support of young people who are bringing world-changing climate litigation to hold their governments accountable, from amplifying the voices of 14 young people in Hawaii during their trial next summer, to urging the Department of Justice to end their opposition to our federal case, Juliana v. United States. Learn more and get involved, ourchildrenstrust.org. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak with you this evening. Together we will fight, and together we will win.
Woo! Yes! Together we will win. Come on, let's get this energy back up. Woo! Okay, we got a lot of J's coming up, and real quick, I know we got a good friend who's waiting in the back, and I know he's got a lot of good things to say. And before we get to that, I do want to make sure that we get to our really great friend, Mr. Jamie Hinn, who is the founder of Fossil Free Media. Come on to the stage. Thank you, Jamie.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. As Carrie said, my name is Jamie Hinn. I'm the director of Fossil Free Media, and we were proud to be part of putting on this program. I've been in the climate fight now for a little while, and first as a student activist, then as one of the founders of 350.org, and now as the director of Fossil Free Media, which is a nonprofit media lab that supports the movement to end fossil fuels. And I've got to say, especially after this weekend, especially after hearing these speakers tonight, I am more confident today in our ability to finally take on the fossil fuel industry than I've ever been. Over the years, we've brought a lot of different tools to this fight. Protests, boycotts, direct action, investigative journalism, civil disobedience, divestment, mass marches, like the amazing mobilization we saw on Sunday. We're going to need all of those going forward. But as you've begun to hear from John and others tonight, we've now got another powerful tool in this fight, the law. Earlier this week, California announced that it is filing a lawsuit against big oil for, and I want to quote the governor and AG here, 50 years of deception, cover-up, and damage that have cost California taxpayers billions of dollars in health and environmental impacts. They are not messing around. California now joins more than 40 other states and municipalities who are suing big oil for climate damages. Fully 25% of Americans now live in a city or a state with a lawsuit against big oil. I say we make that 100%. It's not just here in the United States. There is a tidal wave of climate liability cases around the world, from South Africa to the Philippines to the Netherlands and beyond. These cases take a variety of approaches, but they share a core argument. The fossil fuel industry knew as early as the 1970s that their product would cause catastrophic damage. But instead of warning the public, they intentionally suppressed that knowledge and spent billions of dollars to spread disinformation, undermine the clean energy transition, and lobby against climate action, practices that continue today. And now, as states and municipalities pay billions of dollars to deal with the floods and the fires and droughts and all the other impacts of the climate crisis, they're asking fossil fuel companies to do a simple thing, to pay what they owe. We know that if California or any of these cases can win, it would be game over for the fossil fuel industry as we know it. If oil companies have to pay for the climate damages in California or in Maui or in New York, they'll have to pay for them everywhere. An astronomical sum that would bankrupt even our friends at ExxonMobil and force them to come to the table and allow us to actually push them into the things we know we need them to do. Binding phase out of production, address environmental injustices, and more. Just like court cases help take down big tobacco and opioid manufacturers like Purdue Pharma, they can play a major role in our fight against fossil fuels. But we have to build on this momentum. We need dozens, hundreds more lawsuits to get filed, not only against big oil, but against their trade associations, the PR firms, the banks that have been supporting them. We need congressional investigations to keep digging into the industry's lies, and above all, we all need to educate ourselves and our neighbors about this story. We're the potential jury pool for these cases. It's going to be our neighbors who decide if big oil has to pay, and we need to make sure that they know that big oil knew, how they lied, and what they owe. So to help with this effort, Fossil Free Media and many of our partners are launching this new effort called Make Polluters Pay. We'll be rallying support for the new lawsuits, pushing for political action to hold the industry accountable, and educating the public about big oil's lies. And we start off with a bang. This week, there's a huge billboard up in Times Square all week that says Big Oil knew they were causing climate change, they lied to cover it up, make polluters pay. So we want you to get involved. We want you to get involved. We can pressure attorneys general to urge them to file suit. Look, we've known that for far too long, climate change, we've been told it's just a tragedy of the commons, that it's our fault, that it's human nature, that there's nothing to be done. But we know that climate change isn't just a tragedy, it's a crime. It's a crime. And Big Oil knew, they lied, and now we have the tools to finally make them pay. So thank you so much for coming out tonight. Let's keep up the fight.
Thank you, Jamie. Woohoo! All right now. All right, so we've heard some amazing voices tonight from all over the country and the world. And right now, I want to bring a gentleman to the stage who, at a young age, has been making a huge, huge difference in the state of Tennessee. I know y'all getting ready, all right? And earlier this year, we saw him in a definite, dynamic, triumphant of movement happen on that State House. And he's bringing that energy right here to New York City so that we can continue fighting fossil fuels. And that is Representative Justin J. Pearson of Tennessee, environmental justice leader and co-founder of Memphis Community Against Pollution. There we go. Thank you, sir.
How y'all feel? Wait, in my district, when I say how y'all feel, you gotta say fired up. How y'all feel? How y'all feel? How y'all feel? Fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here. In this hallowed space where history makers have spoken before, where leaders of our nation have gathered in order to make meaning to the words we the people, have gathered to make meaning to the Constitution, to the Declaration of Independence, to the ideals of what this country could be, although it is not yet there. And today, hearing all of these voices from across our country gathered around the cause of preserving the Union by preserving the environment continues the long tradition, a long tradition for which we are all a part. And I am very glad and very thankful and very humbled to be here alongside of you. The fierce urgency of now is one of the most important lines in a speech Dr. King gave one year before he was assassinated at Riverside in New York, talking about the fierce urgency of now. And I believe at this moment in time in our history, we too understand the fierce urgency of now. We are suffering across our country and across our world from disaster after disaster after disaster. There have been more climate disasters this year than any other time in recorded American history. We're experiencing and have experienced the hottest summer in recorded history. The fierce urgency of now requires us to do things differently. And it requires those who have been put in positions of power to use their power in order to create transformational change for our communities that are suffering. What we know about this moment and this time is that the communities that have done the least amount to create pollution are the ones suffering the most. That requires us to act and operate differently. And in this movement that requires some folks to march that might not have marched before, yell that might not have yelled before. I know my brother Jason got arrested today. We are forced in this fierce, urgent moment to do things differently because the consequences of the callous actions of people in power are killing us. We must continue to move forward and fight with the spirit of ancestors who never quit, ancestors who gave all that they could for the movement of justice, those like Fannie Lou Hamer, Dorothy Height, Coretta Scott King, and we must fight with the spirit of those who we sit next to, those who stand alongside us, those who give of their life energy for this movement of environmental and climate justice. Look, I know the battle ahead is an arduous one. We've got the Mountain Valley Pipeline to defeat, which we will defeat. We've got more pipeline projects talking about carbon capture, which is just fake magic. That won't work. We've got fires and floods that are literally creating more refugees in our country because of the inaction on climate change. And if we had cared where the polluters were placed 50 and 60 and 70 years ago, we wouldn't have the climate crisis we do now. If we had cared about the Black and indigenous and communities of color and poor and socioeconomically oppressed people who were having fossil fuel infrastructure forced on them at first, we wouldn't collectively be suffering from the problems that we have now. That is a lesson to us, that it is Black, indigenous, communities of color, socioeconomically oppressed people whose vision in this movement must lead us and must guide us, because there are no people who deserve to be sacrificed. There are no communities that deserve to be sacrifice zones. And our message to Bank of America, our message to the fossil fuel companies is, we will not be sacrificed any longer. We will not be sacrificed. This is not the only way that we can live. And our lives do not have to be governed by these systems of injustice. They do not have to be governed by white supremacy and racism and capitalistic exploitation. Our lives do not have to be governed by the slow lynching of pollution and the violence that fills the lungs and the bones of our communities. This is not the way that we must live. There is another way. There is a more just way, a more fair way, a more equitable way for us to live. And in our imaginations and in the work that we do with our God hands and our God feet and our God hearts and our God voices, we bring forward a world that is not yet but is possible. A world where we do have clean air. A world where we do have clean water. A world where our land is treated as sacred and not as somebody else's profit machine. This is a world. This is a world that we can create. And I believe we will create, because it is the only way that we can preserve this nation. It is the only way that we can preserve this world. I serve in an institution that has for too long been led by people who support and propagate white supremacist ideologies and capitalistic exploitation and patriarchy. These have destroyed the fabric of our country. It has made it much more difficult for us to become the best people that God intends for us to be, these institutions. But there are always people who fight against that status quo. That's us! And when we fight, we win! Abraham Lincoln, not far from here, said these words in 1860. Neither let us be slandered from our duty by false accusations of oil companies. By false accusations against us, nor frightened from it by menaces of destruction to the government, nor of dungeons to ourselves. Let us have faith that right makes might. And in that faith, let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it. Well, what is our duty? Our duty is to fight with all that we've got to save this planet. Our duty is to fight as though we believe in justice and opportunity and equality for everybody. Our duty is to preserve the water. Our duty is to preserve the air. Our duty is to preserve the land. Our duty is to believe in our movement with as much vigor and as much hope and as much wholeness as they believe in their institutions. Because what we believe in cannot be sold. What we believe in, shareholders can't take away. What we believe in can't be sold in the New York Stock Exchange. For what we believe in as a movement. A multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-socio-economic movement for justice that stretches from California to Massachusetts to Tennessee to Louisiana. And it is our duty to know that there's no Calvary coming. We the Calvary. If you in the Calvary, stand up. If you in the movement, stand up. Because I believe that we are the movement. I believe we are the movement that can ensure we have a clean and a just transition. We are the movement that will end Mountain Valley Pipeline and carbon capture. We are the movement that will fight to make sure every child has air that they can breathe and water that they can drink and soil that they can plant in. We are the movement that our ancestors prayed for, that unborn children are counting on us to fight in. We are the movement that we have been waiting for, that this city has been waiting for, that this country has been waiting for, even that this world has been waiting for. And I believe we are the movement that's about to change this whole thing. God bless you and thank you so much.
Oh, come on now, y'all. Come on, give it up for him. All right, we want to thank you all for coming out tonight. And I just want to make sure that y'all are keeping that energy. I brought my chair up here. I brought this for my folk in Alabama and also for my good friend, Miss Zulie Mayfield in Chester, Pennsylvania. So we bringing these chairs and we making sure we having a good old seat. So these people know that we're here and we need them to pay attention and we're ready to fight and we're ready to get with it. So please continue to battle this fight. Please continue to fight for what's right. And maybe we'll see you on Thursday in D.C. as we continue to push our legislators, our permit holders down at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Thank you so much. I hope y'all have a beautiful and wonderful night. Bring your own chair and make sure you have a seat at that table. If they won't give it to you, just go ahead and take it. That's right.